Barakatay Hawa, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Ruchakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Daniel Chapter 7. Now, I was recently watching one of Elder Apostle Tar's videos. I don't remember which one it was. And he went into parts of Daniel 7, bringing out certain points. And he said we need to do a breakdown on Daniel chapter 7, which we've done many times before. But, for the sake of the newer members out there listening and learning, because a lot of our pages have been taken down, but there are pages up where these breakdowns can be found if you do some digging. But Lord's will, we get into this lesson and it'll be an edifying lesson. I may have to do it in a couple of parts because I kind of want to just, if the Spirit allows, go a little bit in depth, not too much, but a little in depth, to bring out some points because we kind of breeze through it sometimes. So I just kind of want to see if Spirit allows to hit some major points in it and bring out some historical events and take it from there, because you could spend hours just on this one chapter alone, which we're not going to do because we know Jake's attention span is very short. So we'll get into it and try to make some points and try to make it concise, like condense it instead of making it, like a big long drawn out lesson. So when we go to Daniel 7 chapter, this chapter pretty much breaks down, as well as Daniel the 2nd chapter, it breaks down all of the major events, or should I say the major empires on the planet prior to Yahushai coming back and establishing his kingdom on the earth. One of the things he said before he was crucified was that Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So that means that there will be ruling dominions and empires on the earth prior to Yahushai coming back. And we know through doing our studies that the last nation to rule would be the Edomites, because Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. And knowing that, we know that this present rule that we're in right now, if you are honest with yourself, you will have to say that America is ruling the whole entire planet, with the so-called white man ruling the whole entire planet, which would make them the Edomites. And once their empire goes down, because if we look around, we see all the signs and the prophecies playing out on the world scene as foretold in the scriptures, So that being the case, we know that the very next thing after all of these things happen would be Yahushua coming back, destroying this place, delivering the elect of the nation of Israel, and setting up and establishing his kingdom. Because when we read in Revelation, the 11th chapter, it says, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of the Lord. Because he's going to take all of those empires down, and they're going to be under his belt. That's why he's known as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Just like every empire that ruled, once they came into power, what happened? All of the empires before them came into subjection under them. It's the same story over and over again. So when we go to Daniel 7:1, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Now, I want to say this for those individuals out there that think that the Bible has to be chronologically chronologically written. If that was the case, if the Bible had to be chronologically written, then why wasn't this written before the 5th and the 6th chapters? Because it says the first year of Belshazzar. When we read the prior chapter to this in Daniel 6, it's during the reign of Darius the First. You know? And then we read the 5th chapter, it speaks about the downfall of the Roman Empire, with Belshazzar the king being the one that was taken down by Darius the Mede. So why wasn't this chronologically put before the 5th and the 6th chapter? This should have been chapter 5, then chapter 5 should have been chapter 6, then chapter 6 should have been chapter 7, if everything goes down like that. But anyway, be it as it may, just wanted to make that point. It says, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. This great sea is talking about the Mediterranean Sea. When he saw this vision, you know, he saw these beasts rising up, you know, out of this, you know, this is where he saw the vision, by the great sea. And when you do research in the scriptures, it tells you that the great sea is the Mediterranean Sea. It says, and 4 beasts came up from the sea. See? So they rose up from the sea, diverse one from another. You know, now when we jump down to the 17th verse, it says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to represent 4 individual kings. It could represent 4 different empires. So you could understand. Because king doesn't always mean one particular individual. It could be one particular individual, or it can be a realm or a kingdom or an empire. You know, and in this case, it's really talking about the different empires. But they were ruled by specific kings. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, now let's go to Daniel 7 and 4. Let's start division. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Now in this verse here, you know, when you do your research, the first empire that was prevalent at this time, prior to this happening, was the Assyrian Empire. All right, the Assyrian Empire was a force to be reckoned with at the time. But then Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonian Empire, they took over the Assyrian Empire. And in some cases it's called the Assyro-Babylonian Empire. All right. So the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. When you look at the symbolisms of the Assyrian Empire, they had something called a griffin. All right. Now a griffin is an animal, right, with wings and the head of a man. All right. And this here human-headed winged lion, Lamatsu, this goes back to the Assyrian Empire. All right. It says from the 9th to the 7th century BC, the king of Assyria ruled over vast empires centered in northern Iraq. The great Assyrian king Ashurbanipal II, so on and so forth. You could read more. I just wanted all of these articles that I'm going to go through. Lord's will, I put them in the description box so you can go and do more research and read up for yourself. All right. So this is a griffin here. You see the body of a lion with wings, and you see the head of a man. This is the Assyrian Empire, right? So it says the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then it says, I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. So when were the wings of this empire plucked? When the Babylonian Empire came into play, because the Babylonian Empire represents the lion. All right. And when we go here, I just typed in Babylonian Empire symbol. It says the lion. The lion is a symbol of Babylon and represents Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, love, and war, meant not only to symbolize Babylon, but to instill fear in enemies. It seems fitting that a single stone lion, albeit poorly preserved, is the only true reminder of Babylon that stands in Iraq today. All right. So when it says, I beheld to the wings thereof were plucked, meaning they took down the Assyrian Empire, and it was lifted up from the earth. Why? Because of the great power that they had to rule, because it was their time. The Most High sets up one and puts down another. So promotion don't come from people wishing or electing someone. It comes from the Heavenly Father. All right. It says it made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it, which means what? They were given wisdom. And this was the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. Now, when we go to Nebuchadnezzar the second, because Nebuchadnezzar pretty much was just a title. You have to remember that when you read about kings like Tiglath-Pileser and Ptolemy and Seleucid and the Caesars and all that, those were all titles that were given to particular rulers of that particular empire. So Nebuchadnezzar, he was the second. Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian cuneiform, blah, 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 meaning Nabu, watch over my ear. This is what his father called him. His father's name was Nabopolassar. It says biblical Hebrew. It gives you Nabawachada Na'a Tazar. Also spelled Nebuchadnezzar II, or Nebuchadnezzar II, was the second king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, ruling from the death of his father Nabopolassar in 605 BC to his own death in 562 BC. Historically known as Nebuchadnezzar the Great, he is typically regarded as the empire's greatest king. Yeah, because he had the height of the empire. Nebuchadnezzar remains famous for his military campaigns in the Levant, for his construction projects in his capital, Babylon, and for the important part that he played in Jewish history. Ruling for 43 years, Nebuchadnezzar was the longest reigning king of the Chaldean dynasty. At the time of his death, Nebuchadnezzar was among the most powerful rulers in the world. All right. And this was that king that's, the lion that stood up upon his feet, and a man's heart was given to it. Now, when we jump down to, I believe it's background, it says here, where is it? As Nabopolassar never clarified his ancestry and lineage in any of the inscriptions, his origin is not entirely clear. Subsequent historians have variously identified Nabopolassar as a Chaldean, an Assyrian, or a Babylonian, which he's really Assyrian. Although no evidence conclusively confirms him as being a Chaldean origin, the term Chaldean dynasty is frequently used modern historians for the royal family he founded, and the term Chaldean Empire remains in use as an alternative historiographical name for the Neo-Babylonian Empire. All right, so these people, even though they ruled the Babylonian Empire, they were Assyrian. All right, that's why it was known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now, the Babylonian Empire going all the way back to Nimrod, those were all Cushites. Which are modern day Ethiopians. All right, they were the original Babylonians in scripture. But when we get to the Neo-Babylonian Empire, it was run by Assyrians. All right, so they just pretty much broke off from the Assyrian Empire and started the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So going back, now that we dealt with that, now let's go to the 5th verse. It says, and behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. And it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Now this particular empire, symbolized by the bear, represents the Medo-Persian Empire. All right. When we go to, I just typed in the Persian bear. It says, is the bear a symbol of Persia? The bear is a creature of contrasts, as it possesses enormous strength and yet generally thrives on fruit and honey. Because of their habit of hibernation during winter months, bears can stand for resurrection. It was the emblem for the kingdoms of Persia and Russia. Okay, and that's heavy because The Persians are represented by the bear and also the Russians. And when we read Revelation 13, that bear in Revelation 13 is a representation of the Russians bringing an end to this global Edomite empire. All right, moving on, it says, what is Middle Persian? The Persian Empire. They were called Persians at first. Oh, matter of fact, before I hit that point, let's go back. Let me move this here so we can stay in step. All right, and behold, another beast, the second like to a bear. That's dealing with the Middle Persian Empire. And it raised up itself on one side, because when you go into the history, the Medes were already a force to be reckoned with. They helped the Babylonians. They helped, they fought in many different wars. They were a force to be reckoned with. But when the Persians came into power, they were pretty much just, meshed in with the Persian Empire. And although they were great, the Persians came up higher than them. That's why it says here, it says they were called Persians at first. They were controlled by the Medes, who had helped Nebuchadnezzar overthrow the Assyrians. It says then the Persians became a dominant force, and the Middle Persian Empire was established. By the time the ruling house of Darius I began, the Medes had lost their importance. Why? Because pursuant to prophecy, not pursuant to history, not pursuant to strength, the scriptures speak about, that by strength shall no one rule, something along those lines. I can't think of the wording. If you brothers know what I'm talking about, put it in the comment board about Kusha. So it's not about your military might, how many weapons you have, how determined you are. It all depends if the Most High gave the authority for it to happen. As it says in Psalm 75, the Most High sets up one and takes down another. The Most High rules in the kingdom of men, Daniel 4:17, and gives it to whoever he wants to. Right? It says, so the Persians came up first. I'm sorry, the Medes came up first, but the Persians became greater, so you could understand. That's why it says it raised itself up on one side, because it was a joint rulership, but one rulership, which was the Persians, was greater. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth between the teeth of it. Now, I know that they say that this speaks about the regions where they conquered, or the 3 empires that they conquered, which you could add that in there. But really what this is talking about is really talking about the directions that they conquered, because they conquered the whole known world at the time. They did conquer, the Babylonians. They did conquer the Lydians and the Egyptians, which they say those are the 3. But really they were conquering from the east. They came from the east, and they worked their way westward, northward, and southward. And when we go to Daniel chapter 8, it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel. And why wasn't this written back then, before all those others, if we talk about chronology? After that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in the vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of what? Elam, the Elamites. Beautiful. The water, brother. The water. It says, 1 Samuel 2:9, he will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. There you go. And shalom to you sincere Akim out there, and you few sisters. Of course, if there's any apostles or bishops, elders, camp leaders watching, shalom to you as well. It says, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram. Now this ram is a representation of what? The Middle Persian Empire. Let's jump down to the 20th verse. The ram which thou sawest, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. See, it breaks it down in the scriptures very simple. It says, so I stood before the river, a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So you had the Medes that were in power. The Persians were in subjection under them. The Persians became greater. They became greater than the Medes. So they came up, they were higher, but they came up last. I saw the ram pushing what? Westward and northward and southward. These were the three ribs in the mouth. You could throw those other, those three major places that they conquered, but it's really talking about the direction. Because remember, they conquered the known world. It wasn't just those three. They conquered the known world. But you could throw that in there as a, as a footnote. So that no beast might stand before him. Right, because there was anything that came before the Medo-Persian Empire, they could not withstand that power. They just became meshed in with that empire. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. Yeah, because at one time it was thought lunacy and madness to try to try to fight against the Persian Empire. All right, so that covers the 5th verse. That's dealing with the Medo-Persian Empire, the bear. It says, after this I beheld another before we move on. I forgot one thing before we move on. All right. Before we move on, it says Cyrus the second of Persia. He was the greatest, or he was the Persian ruler that took over and conquered the known world, the Medes included. Cyrus the second of Persia, commonly known as Cyrus the Great, and also called Cyrus the Elder by the Greeks, was the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian Empire. Under his rule, the empire embraced all of the previous civilized states of the ancient Near East, expanded vastly, eventually conquered most of Western Asia and much of Central Asia, spanning from the Mediterranean Sea, the Hellespont, it says, in the west to the Indus River, in the east. The empire created by Cyrus was the largest the world had yet seen. It is at its maximum extent under his successors. The Achaemenid Empire stretched from parts of the Balkans, eastern Bulgaria, Paeonia, and Thrace, Macedonia, and southeast Europe, proper in the west to the Indus Valley in the east. It says the reign of Cyrus lasted about 30 years. His empire took root with his conquest of the Median Empire, see? Because remember, the Medians came up first. The Persians came up last, but they became greater, so they became higher. Followed by the Lydian Empire and eventually the Neo-Babylonian Empire. He also led an expedition into Central Asia, which resulted in major campaigns that were described as having brought into subjection every nation without exception. Cyrus did not venture into Egypt and was alleged to have died in battle while fighting the Massageta, an ancient Eastern Iranian nomadic tribal confederation, along the Sir Darya in December 530 BC. However, Xenophon claims that Cyrus did not die in battle and returned to the Achaemenid ceremonial capital of Persepolis again. He was succeeded by his son Cambyses II, who managed to conquer Egypt, Nubia, and Cyrenaica during his short rule. And you can read more if you want. Like I said, I put these in the description box. Let me see what this was about. Okay, this goes over here. And let me move this over so we can stay in tune. So when we go to the 6th verse of Daniel 7, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. And, if you want to know the nature of a leopard, you have to, do some research. The scriptures say that they shall be like leopards in the cities or something like that. They shall watch over the cities like leopards. And pretty much a leopard, when you look at the nature of a leopard is a loner. A leopard is very stealthful. He moves in the daytime, in the open, among other animals, and they never see him. He's very, very crafty, very skillful, very stealthful. They're very powerful animals too. So when you know the nature of them, you understand why the scriptures, matter of fact, let's go to, I believe that's either Job the 4th chapter or Job the 8th chapter. Just bear with me 1 second. Let me just put it this way. Here it is. It's 12th chapter. I thought it was. It says, "But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee." So pretty much they show you by the characteristic of this particular animal, in this case the leopard, why it was used, for Alexander the Creep or Alexander the Greek. After this, I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And this represents the Greek Empire. The leopard is a representation of Alexander the Creep or the Great, Alexander the Great, Alexander III of Macedon, commonly known as Alexander the Great, was a king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon. He succeeded his father Philip II to the throne in 336 BC at the age of 20. He spent most of his ruling years conducting a lengthy military campaign throughout Western Asia and Egypt. By the age of 30, he had created one of the largest empires in history, stretching from Greece to northwestern India. He was undefeated in battle and is widely considered to be one of history's greatest and most successful military commanders. All right, if you want to read more, you may read more. Just go to the links in the description box and you can get more. But he took over, and I believe it was the Battle of Gaugamela, because he had several battles against the Persians, because the Persians at that time were a force to be reckoned with. And when he went up against him, the Persians are thinking like normal. Ain't nobody gonna defeat us. We the shit. And eventually they got caught, with their pants down, and eventually they got. Oh, matter of fact, you know what? Fall of the Persian Empire in the East. Let's see. Yeah, I don't really see it in here. Just spare me 1 second. Okay, no, it was a Battle of Isis. Okay, so you had the Battle of Gaugamela and then the Battle of Isis. Okay, so here, the Battle of Isis, in which Alexander the Great secured a decisive victory over Darius III of Persia. Okay, and that was the ultimate battle, that decided the fate of the Persians, and they became tributary underneath the Greek Empire. Why? Because it was their time. You know, just like America today thinks they're never going to go down because they have a great empire and their tentacles stretch to the four corners of the earth. They think that they'll never be brought down. But this is the same mentality that all those other empires had, that they will never be taken down. But you have to remember, prophecy, prophecy, prophecy. Once this final empire falls, Yahweh kingdom is going to be set up. And the kingdom cannot be set up unless the previous kingdom is taken down. Two kings cannot sit on the same throne. There will be great conflict. The Battle of Isis. So we got that. All right, so now moving on, let's move this forward. It says here, which had upon his back 4 wings of a fowl. Now these 4 wings of a fowl represents his 4 major generals. Let's go here real quick. Daniel 8:5. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth. He came from where? The west. And where is Greece and Macedon at? Towards the west, from the Medo-Persian Empire. So when we jump down to the 21st verse, it says, the rough goat is the king of Persia, which is what? The first king of the Greek Empire, which is, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. I don't know if I said Persia, king of Grecia. So the first king was what? Who was the first king of the Greek Empire? Let's go to 1 Maccabees, the 1st chapter and the 1st verse. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes. We just read that in the Battle of Isis. And he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. So that king was the rough goat, which is the king of Grecia, was who? Alexander the Great, or the Greek. And it says, and before we read on, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, which is Alexander the Great, or the creep. When you read the history in Josephus, the priests at the time showed, once Alexander came into Jerusalem, Salakia, and gave them much reverence, they showed him in the scriptures, the parts of the scriptures that were speaking about him. And it said that he perceived that it was speaking about him. He was that great king to conquer at this time, the goat, the leopard, so on and so forth. All right, so going back, it says, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. Why? Because he conquered the known world. And I believe it was about 12 years. He conquered the known world. That was unthought of ever, because wars were fought for long periods of time. So in 12 years, he conquered the known world. And he wanted to keep going, but his man was like, nah, man, that's enough. He wanted to just keep going east. Just wanted to just keep conquering, But they was like, nah, you've gone too far. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes, and that notable horn was who? The king of Grecia, which was Alexander the Creep. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. Remember, each empire that came after the Babylonians was inferior, because it was an inferior metal that was used for them, but they were stronger in battle. It says, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, meaning this was hot anger, and smote the ram and brake his 2 horns, meaning he took down their power, because they had horns. Each one of them had a ruling power, a staff, and he broke that power. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. And they even said that when Alexander beat Darius, that Darius fled, he ran. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Right. because there was nothing that anyone could do. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the horn was broken. Why? Because he died very young, about the age of 32 or something like that. From some disease. You have different, accounts. Some say he died of syphilis. Some say he died of this. So it's all kind of different accounts. But nevertheless, he died according to what? Prophecy. And for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven, which were four horns. And they took over his empire. Because when you go to Daniel 11, it says that his posterity would not rule in his stead, but his generals did. All right. Let's see. Right, so going to the 22nd verse, now that being broken, meaning what? The first king, the first horn, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, right, the so-called Greeks, the Edomites, but not in his power, because he didn't rule. Remember, kings back then ruled by succession. Their sons were brought up and taught to be nobles and taught how to rule a kingdom, the strategy of war, the strategy of maintaining the income of an empire, studying the different histories, studying the different battle techniques and tactics on the battlefield, every different thing that was given to them. But his son did not reign, and I believe they killed Roxanne, which I believe that was Roxanne was his wife, and his son. They killed them both. It says, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressor, okay, this is going into something else. So let's go to this one here. Where is it? Right here. It says the four-headed leopard phases. The third, and then when you read some of these, you brothers that are newer in this, be careful, because you have bones in this. That's why you have to get the understanding first before you venture off and try to do your own research. You could do your own research, but keep in mind that these things like this have bones in them. All right? And you have to be careful, because if not, before you know it, you're going to be teaching some old crazy stuff. Like when you go through some of these breakdowns that these devils do, they get part of it right, but then when they get to the fourth beast and the horn and all that, they start talking about the Antichrist and all that, and the anti-type, and inside joke, but the Antichrist and all that, that's total bullshit. All right, stick to what you know. All right, just wanted to throw that out there. Caveat emptor, buyer beware, or caveat, which is a warning, Latin for warning. So it says the third symbol representative of the kingdom of Babylon under a new constitution shown to Daniel was a leopard with four heads and four wings. Its answer to the brazen part of the image, right, which is in Daniel the 2nd chapter, which bore rule over all the earth, and they did, because they conquered the known world. And to the goat with four horns pointing to the four winds in the 8th chapter, but without the little horn, which is represented by the fourth beast, which this is off right here, because when you read Daniel 7, it speaks about a little horn. The little horn in Daniel 7 is America. The little horn in Daniel 7 has nothing to do with the little horn in Daniel 8. The little horn in Daniel 8 represents Antiochus Epiphanes. So there's two separate horns in two separate chapters. All right, and you have to know that to be able to differentiate. It says, which is represented by the fourth beast. That, like I said, that's the leopard is Macedonia, which are the Greeks, representing Alexander the Great's dominion, and those of his four principal successors who divided it among themselves. Now, when you go and you deal with Alexander's generals, he had many generals. Antigonus was one of them. Sometimes in these breakdowns, they try to put Antigonus in there. Antigonus was not one of the four, but he was a top general that received certain lands and stuff like that. But this ain't that kind of party right here. Antigonus was not invited to this party, this prophetic party. The body of the beast represents the power. The body of the beast represents the power before it was divided, and each head, one of the subsequent divisions, The wings represented the position of the Macedonian heads relatively to the Holy Land. At the death of Alexander, a long period of war ensued, which resulted BC 301 in the establishment of the following kingdoms on the territory of the kingdom of men. So you have the first head, second head, third head, fourth head. All right? The kingdom of the south, comprehending Egypt, Libya, Arabia, Coele-Syria, and Palestine, under the Ptolemies. Ptolemy was one of the heads. Second head, the kingdom of the northwest, including Thrace, Bithynia, etc., or the Thraco-Macedonian. Where is the... I thought I had the... Let me see. Okay, you know what? Let's skip this one. Because it's not really breaking down who. This one was the Ptolemies, but they didn't really. Then this one is Seleucids, but they didn't really give the other one. So let's go to this one here. Let's move this over. Let's go to this one here. The Hellenistic world, the world of Alexander the Great. When we scroll down here, we're just going to go straight to the point. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his 4 generals, known in Latin as the Diadochi, the name by which they are still referred from the Greek, Diadokoi, meaning successors. Lysimachus, who took Thrace and much of Asia Minor. Cassander controlled Macedonia and Greece. Ptolemy I ruled Egypt, Palestine, Cilicia, Petra, and Cyprus. He founded the Ptolemaic dynasty, which lasted until the death of Cleopatra VII, because there were 7 Cleopatras, in 30 BCE. Seleucus I Nicator ruled the remainder of Asia and founded the Seleucid Empire, which was comprised of Mesopotamia, the Levant, Persia, and part of India. So the 4 generals were Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy I, Seleucus I Nicator. This is where the kingdom was divided among these 4. All right? So you could understand. So, moving on. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So that's pretty much the 3rd beast, which is the leopard. Now the 4th beast, and we're going to end it here, and then Lord's will come back, another time and do some more. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. This is the Roman Empire. This represents the Roman Empire. Now, when you go here, and I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. The military might of the ancient Roman Empire was very strong. That's why they were compared to iron. Now, when we go here to this article, matter of fact, you know what? Instead of doing that, let's move this one forward. Let's go to this article here. It says Rome's Imperial Iron Age. Iron is a useful metal, and you can do a lot with it. You can make cookware, nails, agricultural tools, and other handy things. Despite this, we tend to associate iron with one application in particular, warfare. There's a reason for this. The Iron Age of Europe saw the expansion of several military powers. From the Athenian Empire to the Empire of Alexander the Great, none, however, would reach the size or scale of the Roman Empire. The Roman Iron Age began long before Rome became an international empire, but it was partly thanks to iron weapons that the Roman military was so effective. Of course, it was iron in the hands of Rome's enemies that led to its downfall. How's that for ironic? Get it? Iron? Ironic? They're trying to be a little funny there, but hey, good pun. Now, we know that they're pretty much the establishment or the beginning of them was really through Julius Caesar. They were ruling before, but once Julius Caesar came on the scene, this is what cemented the beginning. The real guess you could say, beginnings of the Roman Empire, because they go back, before this. You had Pompey, you had Crassus, you had, Julius Caesar, you had many military campaigns, but at this point, this is what gave rise to the Roman Empire, as we're going to read here. Gaius Julius Caesar was a Roman general and statesman, a member of the first triumvirate. Triumvirate simply means three men. Tri is three, and virate is where you get the word virile or man, three men. Caesar led the Roman armies in the Gallic Wars before defeating his political rival Pompey in a civil war, and subsequently became dictator of Rome from 49 BC until his assassination in 44 BC. He played a critical role in the events that led to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. And why was that? Because it was prophecy, prophecy, prophecy. That's right. So going back, it says, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth that represented their power, because teeth also represents power. It devoured and brake in pieces, right? Because it took down all of those empires, subjugated them with that great power, and stamped the residue at the feet of it, right? Because they made them to follow and be tributary to the Roman Empire. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. Now, how was it diverse? Every empire that ruled prior, they ruled by what? Kingship. Once the Roman Empire was established, it was run by a Senate house and one ruler. All right. Let's start at first Maccabees 8 and 13. Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted, meaning the Romans. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Why? Because when they were established as a kingdom, they were going to be diverse from all of the other empires. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a Senate house, just like you have today in America, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end they might be well ordered. And that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. So pretty much that's it. So the government to one man was what? Their president, which back then they were known as Caesars. Today they're known as presidents. Same difference. All right, and this is how they were diverse from all the other ones. All right. So it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, and that another little horn, or other little horn, this represents America. All right. This has nothing to do with the little horn in Daniel 8. And this is where their breakdowns go off, because they try to say that this is a representation of the Antichrist, and all kind of madness comes after that, It says, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots, right? Because, you had a conglomeration of nations of Europe. They had, when you go into the 10 horns, that represents the 10 European nations back then that were a part of the Roman Empire or in league with Rome, which today would represent the EU, which really goes back to the EEC, the European Economic Community, which today would be the EU. And they had ancient names back then. So back then, under the ancient names, not back then. Now today, in modern day, this little horn, when they made war with them, there were three major horns, you could say, that had power over America. And when these devils took over, they took over three major empires. You had the War of Independence, which was a war between America and Britain. You had the Spanish-American War and the French-American War. That's where you have English names in America, going back to England. You have French names, like Louisiana, Baton Rouge and all that, going back to the French. And then you have Spanish names, which was the southern half of America, which was held by the Spaniards. So America routed all three of them out, and they were established as the sole rulers of America. Okay, it says, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Yeah, because they are wiser than Daniel. There's no secret that they can hide from them. They have wisdom, but with this wisdom, they've corrupted themselves. It says, in the mouth speaking great things, meaning they blaspheme the Most High, they blaspheme Yahushua, the angels, the Israelites. They speak great things. As a matter of fact, there's a article right now. It's saying that these devils, these scientists, are close to finding the origins of the moon. Ain't that about a bitch? When all you got to do is go to Genesis, the 1st chapter, the 14th verse down, and it tells you where the origins of the moon came from. The Most High created it. But they're going to find out, where the moon, how the moon was created. Esau is too much, man. So with that, I'm going to end it there. Lord's will, I could do a part 2 and cover maybe the rest of the chapter in part 2. But I just want, through the Spirit, Barakateh Ha'Bashem Al-Shah, the Lord allow me to get a little bit more in depth just to give you some key points. And there's other stuff you can go into, but, you don't want to make a lesson too long because Jake's attention span is very short. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters that were edified. To the next time I say Shalom.